Hello, this is Coding Gicha for full-stack developers. If you manage the entire Vim configuration including Vim packages with Git, you can immediately set the previous configuration just by cloning the Git repository, but if you are not familiar with Git commands, you may feel somewhat uncomfortable. Vimmy is a tool that allows you to easily and quickly manage Vim configuration with Git even if you are not familiar with Git commands. If you manage Vim configuration directly with Git, you have to go to the .vim directory and execute Git commands, which is cumbersome, and you have to be familiar with Git commands, but Vimmy will solve this inconvenience. Vimmy not only makes it easy and intuitive to manage Vim packages, but also manages the entire Vim configuration with Git, and you can easily initialize it or start managing or clone with Git. To install Vimmy, simply download it with wget at the location specified in the path. I will give it execution permission. Let's run Vimmy. You can check the Vimmy execution options. It supports short options as well as long options. You can check the status of configuration files and packages by giving the status option after Vimmy, or simply by giving the S option. I will show you how easy it is to use Vimmy to manage your Vim configuration without managing it with Git. To make it a state where it was not managed with Git, I will delete the .git directory. I will also delete the .git modules file. I will also delete the pack directory set as the runtime path in the native pack. Let's check the status with Vimmy. A message will be printed saying that the .vim directory is not managed as a Git repository. I will create a repository to manage Vim configuration on the Git server. Here, I will use GitHub, which is free to use. I will create a new repository to make the initial state where it is not managed as a Git repository. I will name it something that makes it easy to recognize that it is a repository for Vim configuration. I will make it a private repository. The current Git server repository is empty. To manage the local .vim directory with Git, you need stage the files, register a Git account, commit at a remote address, and push to the Git repository. Even if you don't know the Git command at all, you can easily do this series of tasks with Vimmy init or vimmy. Enter the repository address to be managed with Git. If you use multiple accounts on the Git server of the same domain, authentication problems may occur. If you specify the username in front of the domain address, you can prevent conflicts. The value entered in the username will be registered as a local setting in the .vim directory managed by Git. If there is only one account on the Git server and it is already set to global, you can just press enter without entering anything. If you are also using the user email set to global, you can just press enter without entering anything. The default value of Git branch is main. If you use main without using other branches such as master, you can just press enter. The default file name of the .vimrc file managed in the .vim directory is vimrc.vim. You can also change it to another name. You can now easily and quickly manage your Vim configuration as a Git repository. In fact, your local Vim configuration has been uploaded to the remote Git server. You can work intuitively without having to worry about how to add Vim packages or what command to use to manage them as Git submodules. You can add Vim packages with vimmy add or vimmy. Let's add Vim Airline. Just enter the values corresponding to the owner and package name in the GitHub address that manages Vim Airline. The default category for Vim packages is plugins/start. The package name is automatically suggested based on the value entered in the repository. If you want to use it as is, just press enter. Let's also add the matchit.zip package. Let's also add the color scheme package. I personally recommend Vim 1. This time I'll change to a different category. The opt is a category that manages packages that are not applied in advance and can be loaded only when needed. You can easily and quickly upload and manage the Vim configuration set locally to the remote Git repository with vimmy push or vimmy p. Let's check the status of the Vim configuration I've worked on so far. Since it was reflected to the remote Git repository with vimmy push, all the icons in the package have changed to the normal package status. Since vimmy manages Vim packages as native packs, they are managed as subdirectories of the directory managed by the runtime path. Therefore, they are loaded in the order sorted by package name. In other words, packages are loaded and applied in the order of matchit.zip and Vim Airline. There is no priority among the currently installed packages, but if you install more packages, there may be a priority among the packages. For example, to apply the font glyph icon to Vim Airline through the Vim Dev Icons package, Vim Airline must be loaded first. When the Vim Scroll Status package, which displays the scroll status, is applied to Vim Airline must be loaded first. The Vim Airline Themes package also requires Vim Airline to be loaded first. Other packages generally have no coupling between packages, but packages that configure something in Vim Airline require Vim Airline to be loaded first. Let's remove the Vim Airline package and add it again with a package name that can move it to the front of the order. You can easily remove a package with vimmy remove or vimmy r. Let's add the Vim Airline package again. Let's add the number 10 in front of the package name to move it to the front of the order. Since the order can change again, it's a good idea to set it at intervals of 10 so that it can fit in between. Another representative package that has a priority like Vim Airline is Vim Dev Icons. For example, if you want to display icons as font glyphs in Vim Buffet, Vim Dev Icons must be loaded first. Let's name the Vim Dev Icons package with the number 20. As mentioned earlier, other packages generally have no coupling between packages. You only need to pay attention to Vim Airline and Vim Dev Icons. Please note that displaying icons through the Vim Dev Icons package requires Nerd fonts to be installed. The installation of Nerd fonts will be covered later. Packages that are not in a normal state display their status in a square box with the first letter, but in Tixis, a GTK4-based terminal emulator, they are displayed in a slightly awkward shape in a long rectangle shape. I will change the package status display shape through Vimmy configuration. You can check the explanation of Vimmy configuration in Vimmy tutorial or Vimmy T. The path and name of the Vimmy configuration file are explained. The default value of package status weight is 127,215. When set to 127,215, the package status is displayed in square letters. Originally, in a GTK3-based terminal emulator, it was displayed properly in a square shape, but in a GTK4-based terminal emulator, it is distorted. In Ubuntu, Tixis, a GTK4-based terminal emulator, is not yet officially distributed, but it is installed and used here. Therefore, this problem may be solved when it is officially installed. However, to prevent this problem from occurring at all, Vimmy 2.6 will change the default appearance of the status display to a circle. When removing a package, the list of removed packages is displayed in the Removed Packages category, but the icon glyph of the removed category is recognized as a narrow width character, so the characters are displayed without a space after the icon. This problem was caused by incorrect recognition of what should have been a wide width character. Since this is an error in the logic of processing character width in the terminal, vimmy did not correct it. However, since the same phenomenon occurs not only in GTK3-based terminal emulators but also in GTK4-based terminal emulators, I will verify this further and find improvements. In the current version, you can correct it by adding a space after the icon. Let's open the vimmy.cfg file. The default value of package status weight is 127,215, but it is currently displayed as a distorted square, so change it to 9,333 to make it a circle. I will skip the correction of the category removed icon. This is because I will install nerd fonts later and change them to nerd fonts glyph icons. Since I installed the Vim Dev Icons package, the icons are displayed as font glyphs in Vim Airline, but nerd fonts must be installed to display the icons properly. Let's check the local status of Vim configuration with vimmy s. The awkward package status display shape has been improved. Currently, Vimmy 2.5 has an error where packages in replace status are not displayed as R symbols. This will be improved in Vimmy 2.6. Vimmy's icons are displayed as emoji and Unicode glyphs by default, but they are colorful and may give off a classic feel. You can change them to a more modern look by installing nerd fonts. Since nerd fonts are managed on GitHub, you can get them with the git clone command, but the size is so large that it may take more than an hour. I recommend downloading them as a zip file from the site. It may vary depending on your network environment, but it took about 8 minutes to download here. Let's go to the location where the zip file was downloaded. Let's unzip it. Since the zip file is over 3 GB in size, it will take some time to unzip it. Let's go to the unzip directory. The fonts will be installed when you run the install.shush file. Let's delete the unzip directory. Let's also delete the downloaded compressed file. You need to run the terminal again to reflect the nerd fonts. Let's set the icons of Vimmy to be applied with the font glyph icons of nerd fonts. It's annoying to type it directly and there's a risk of typos. I'll redirect the result of running Vimmy tutorial to a vimmy.cfg file. The icon glyph of the removed category was incorrectly recognized as a narrow width character in the command line, but it is correctly recognized as a wide width character in Vim. For this reason, I didn't correct it in Vimmy 2.5, but if the character width is still incorrectly recognized in the Linux distribution at the time of distribution of Vimmy 2.6, I will correct it. I will delete all the rest except for the settings that use nerd font glyphs. The default shape of package status weight is a square character, and it was a distorted rectangle in GTK4-based terminals, but if nerd fonts are installed, it will be displayed properly in a square shape. However, the alphabets inside the square characters are too small and poor in readability, so circle characters are more recommended even in environments that use nerd fonts glyphs. Let's check all the packages installed via vimmy s again. The icons are now more calm and modern. If you feel that the margin between the icon and the text is a bit wide, you can also fix this in the vimmy.cfg file. Since the glyph icons that use emoji and Unicode have a slightly wider font width, the icons are all set to 2 characters wide to match this. However, the Nerd Fonts glyphs do not have such wide font widths, so it is better to set them to 1 character wide. Of course, in environments that use more than 2 bytes, the font width is forcibly adjusted, so the text appears wider, so it may be better to maintain the 2 character width. In environments that use more than 2 bytes, the font width and text lines are forcibly adjusted, making it look more awkward. This phenomenon has not yet occurred in GTK4 based terminals, but it may occur again when it is officially installed. I'm thinking a lot about how to display Vimmy icons. The current thinking is that there will be almost no cases of mixing glyphs that use nerd fonts with glyphs that do not. And I think it would be more user-friendly to automatically check whether nerd fonts are installed and automatically display icons accordingly. In an environment where nerd fonts are installed, I plan to use icons that are more intuitive than text for the status of the package. In Vimmy 2.6, I plan to improve the icon shape after further consideration and verification. I will push the modified Vim configuration to the remote Git server. I will run vim. Since nerd fonts were not installed, the icons in the vim dev icons package that were broken are now displayed properly. Although it is unrelated to Vim, I will also modify the settings of LSD, which requires the installation of nerd fonts. I installed LSD and set LSD as an alias for ls, and when nerd fonts were not installed, all the icons were broken, so I set it not to display the icons. I will delete that setting. In an environment where a language uses more than 2 bytes, the character width is excessively compensated, so the characters appear wider, so you may need to set the separator of the icon to 2 spaces to make it look better. However, there is currently no excessive compensation in GTK4 based terminals. I will run LSD with double L. Since nerd fonts were installed, the icons are displayed properly even on LSD. The icons are also displayed properly in LSD's tree view. This time, I covered how to manage Vim configurations with Vimmy. In particular, I explained the task of starting management with Git. Next time I will explain how to easily and quickly clone a Vim configuration already managed as a Git repository through Vimmy. Thank you for watching.